Alrighty, good morning. It is 6 o'clock, and this is going to be kind of a slow moving, meditative discussion. I want to quantify and back up some of the statements made in a previous video because telepathically I can pick up on maybe some confusion, and it could just be one listener that may be wondering what I mean when I say that we need to rise above the misogynistic worldview that some men have developed, while at the same time coming to an understanding that we should not see certain women as superior to us, as many women in today's society are acting like they are. And there's reasons why many of them have been misled into thinking that they have a superior intelligence or understanding of spirit. And so, when we look at many of the prophets of the past, when we look at the various spiritual literatures that are out there, there's a reason why there's a lot of men. And it's not always the result of male domination. But with regards to that, I believe that many women that have immigrated to the United States from other countries in which they are typically oppressed, that they should rise above their repression and be free. That they should have the freedom to speak to, for example, their relatives. And so I'm opposed to the ongoing misogyny that is still existing in families that have immigrated from certain countries. So, for example, when we look at my father's family, when we look at the female relatives that I have, there's a reason why they steer clear of me. There's a reason why they don't speak to me. There's a reason why they block me. There's a reason why they don't respond to the Facebook links to my Facebook Outside the Box page. And it has to do with the culture that they come from. Likewise, in the Americult, there is a reason why very few women have appreciated my warnings about human trafficking, not just what could be in the future, but how we have seen an escalation of it since I first began to talk about it as a problem. And I know that I asked Leon Legant in my interview with him more than once. He didn't bring it up. I brought it up. Leon, what do you think about the reality of human trafficking exploding if, in fact, we are occupied by these superpower nation states? And he said yes. That he also saw that coming. I have been seeing it coming within for a long, long time. And in spirit, let me tell you what I say, and let me explain to you why this is not misogyny. It is not misogyny to call out the demonic influence over men and women, women and men. It is demonic to think that it is misogyny, to want to be a good man, to protect women from the evil of this world that not only seeks to oppress them, to manipulate them into carrying the babies of demons, which is something that people do theorize about. Women being impregnated by demonic entities. We're not going to go too deep down that road. But ultimately, the human trafficking epidemic that I'm warning you about could be a part of a darker agenda, potentially a hybrid program. So there's a reason why there is a real war that you don't hear about from the far left or the far right on women, and specifically certain white women, and even women in certain countries in the Middle East. I'm sure there's many, many women in Afghanistan and Iraq that have been disappeared to never be seen again, to have ended up God knows where. And there may be an interest genetically in women with certain genetic types or blood types. And so what's missing in today's day and age are good men in positions of influence. And there's many women that think that they are independent of men, when in reality they are hyper, super dependent on the system. In particular, the system not collapsing. If we were to see a rise in independent women, we would see an increase in women living off grid. And there's ways in which women could protect themselves with firearms and maybe living with other men and women that may help them protect themselves. It is a myth that women are more in danger living in rural America with the trees, in the desert, in lightly populated areas. Okay, I would say that it is in these dense population centers that women are more at risk, especially in cities like Portland, Oregon, where the worship of the beautiful woman has taken us out of balance with nature. Because in these areas where you have a lot of sexually attractive women and a very active adult industry full of pornography, which gets sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker by the year, strip clubs, prostitution on the streets, escort services, lingerie modeling, also known as Jack Shacks, where a man goes in and pleasures himself to a woman undressing, often in the same room, not separated by glass. What's missing in our species is what could be called spiritual sex, where a man and a woman love each other. Not just the orgasm or the sexual experience, but they actually love each other, where they actually make love to each other, where they actually love the soul of the person that they are having sexual relations with. Not just ripping their clothes off and having a quick bang, Many times, people fornicate with each other when they ultimately hate the other ethnicity. By the way, yes, we do see a rise in black-white sexual relationships. And there is some controversy around the fact that this is pushed by the mainstream media. This is not to then say that it is a sin for people of different ethnicities to have babies and children, but to point out that there seems to be an agenda on the part of the controllers to say that a certain combination of genetics is more preferred than, say, the combination of genetics speaking to you now, or say, for example, white people in general. Some people are being programmed to think that white people in general are bad, when in reality, people aren't bad. Races aren't bad. What we need to curtail is the negative thought forms and programming that for hundreds of years and thousands of years has been directed at certain groups that might commonly be put into certain boxes, i.e., this group, that group, the other group, right? Do you understand? There's nothing wrong with any race of people, but there is an issue with the programming which comes from the demonic realms, which oftentimes hijacks the consciousness of a king or a ruler, hence the archons, the rulers. They rule through deceit. So these areas, like Portland, Oregon, and others, I speak of Portland, Oregon because I'm from there. That's why. If you're from LA, if you're from Oklahoma City, if you're from New York, if you're from somewhere in Europe, then you should also start your own YouTube channel and talk about the city where you're from. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the city where you're from if I'm not from the city that you're from. And this, I'm sure you understand. I'm from Portland, Oregon. And as I said many years ago, Portland, Oregon is what I call the city of the wounded goddess. It is an example of nature raped. You could even say gang raped by many, many humans that have come to exploit nature and create their own Dante's Inferno. So as we look at the foundation of Portland, Oregon, as they brought in the prostitutes, essentially slaves, to pleasure the men that built the city, who they themselves were shanghaied and kidnapped. That negative residue from the past that has not been cleared still infects the people of that day that may falsely believe that they are free and independent, but are still in bondage, S&M style, BDSM style, as the earth was raped. So do the humans simulate rape. Without even realizing that they are influenced by the spirits of the past. Human beings that were once alive, but died in great pain. Human beings who suffered needlessly because of the corruption of those in control. And so we live in a world now where people talk about women's rights, we see the world in modern feminism. We see the ongoing gender warfare. But we are not seeing women truly become independent from this evil system, even if they are separated from men and rewarded through the welfare system, through the court system that will oftentimes favor the woman over the man. Now, in today's day and age, I do not approve of the behaviors in mass of the men, and I really hesitate to call them real men. However, when we look at those human beings that are receptive to my message, they are predominantly men. And while I don't sense higher consciousness in all of them, I do sense a higher consciousness in some of them. And as I said to you, there's a reason why many of the people that were drawn to my original YouTube channel will not be drawn to the new Alex Ansary on this YouTube channel. And I don't want them here. And I don't want their money. The only human beings, men and women, that I want drawn to my content are those that are truly of a higher consciousness, that are not cruel, that are not callous, that do not seek to mix my content with the content of other disturbed men and women. And so I do believe also that as my words will live on in 100 years, the women of the future are going to wish they had an Alex Ansary to date, to know, to talk to learn from. Because I am stepping into my role as a teacher. There's no doubt in my mind that I have been a teacher for many, many years. Sometimes knowing it fully, and sometimes not knowing it, just automatically speaking, just engaged in, quote, automatic writing on my Facebook posts. On that note, in the future, there is going to be a very large book published, which is going to be a compilation of my past Facebook posts and, quote, status updates. Because there's a great deal of wisdom there. I will say that women have the potential, okay, if they were not being attacked by certain forces, if they were able to free their mind from the matrix, from these entities in this matrix that are manipulating them, manipulating their sexuality, directing them in the direction of the wrong men and away from the good men, directing them into serving these multinational corporations, getting involved in, quote, higher education, when in some cases that may benefit them, but true higher education comes from God. There's nothing wrong with bettering yourself, but we have been conditioned into thinking that we better ourselves by serving the state, by serving corporations. And some people, as I said, they go on a different form of welfare. Not welfare like you might be thinking, but to get involved in social services, in pushing papers, and basically filling out applications for the poor and indigent men that have been left behind. And they basically get what could be considered to be the equivalent of a commission, essentially. They fill out the paperwork. What's your name? What's your social security number? How many kids do you have? What is your income? Do you have a car? What is the make and model of your car? What is the license plate number on your car? What is the number on your license plate itself, right? They're just pushing paper. They're entering data. It can be argued that that is not real work. And so women have the potential to do greater and greater things in this world if they wanted to. But they have to want to. And how we get to the point where more and more women want to do good is an area of great debate that cannot be answered in today's recording. What can be said is this: today's current new world order structure and grid as it is right now is not supportive in reality of good women stepping forth and being in their true power and supporting the good men. In fact, if they were to step forth, in some cases, they would be attacked either physically, spiritually, or psychologically by other unstable men and women possessed by demons. Some women show and display that they have above average intelligence, not just beauty, external beauty, but above average intelligence and intuition. However, if they are not surrounded by people that will support them on their journey, if they already made the mistake of bearing children with men that are do-nothing slobs, that sit around making babies and doing nothing else but having sex with a woman and making baby after baby while that man does actually nothing to make the world a better place, her chances with that man in her life, her chances of being successful as a woman, contributing to this awakening process, are less than likely. And that woman, like many, many other women, may unconsciously, without becoming aware of it as the days fade on, as the months fade on, from that period in time in which she was very, very awake, she can find herself very, very much asleep. Yet she may still be seeking affection and validation and acceptance from this world as a woman of value. But she may be unconsciously doing it through the wrong means. So she may end up on TikTok, hula hooping, doing 5-second videos, filming her eyes, babbling incoherently about something that makes no sense to nobody. Or like many, many others, right? Doing makeup beauty, videos for TikTok and social media, in a world in which the external beauty of a woman is held in a high regard. And as wonderful as physical beauty can be, many of the women today that are what we would call sexy, hot, or attractive are devoid of true spiritual understanding and knowledge within. And there's many, many reasons why that is. And because of the nature of biology, to sexually procreate with women that look attractive, that have certain body types, that may be conducive to bearing multiple children, hence fertility, hence the unconscious worship of the fertility gods, to bring many, many babies into this world so that they will be slaves as well. Because of that obsession, other women that may not possess that same level of physical attractability, that may in fact have a higher degree of spiritual understanding, they will be discarded by both men and women. Meanwhile, it will be both men and women that will hold up the perceivably more attractive woman with the perfect breasts, the perfect face, the perfect hips. Hence, we have the terminology which I have coined, white woman supremacy. It really does exist. And there are many women in this society that are far more privileged than women in other societies because of their higher perceived attractability and value. In this world of the social ape hierarchy, I also call them android apes, as many of these modern humanoids are being led by algorithms, are tied to their smartphones. And so truly respecting women means seeing the value in women around the world, regardless of their ethnicity and their perceived attractability. And many men have a certain biological wiring within them to procreate or to chase after or to lust after certain women, like the women that I just got done speaking about. And I told you what the danger of that is, of certain women having a perceived higher value than other women in a day and age of human trafficking, including a day and age in which certain cities have a higher percentage of those attractive women. Not just Portland, but maybe certain cities in Europe and other cities in America. When things collapse and the evil of this world really comes out and shows its teeth, women living in those areas that are perceived to be higher value humans that may have benefited throughout their whole lifetime through jobs and careers that in reality got by on their looks. And that also means progressing in the world of higher education, because you know the truth, don't you? There's plenty of people that have benefited from being able to get involved in what's called higher education. And so through this modern feminist movement, certain women, through also the help of some of their boyfriends and certain scholarship programs and families, they have benefited from the higher education system, but they are not necessarily more intelligent, and they do not necessarily have a close connection to God. In many ways, our species is conditioned to view money as its God. Let me give you some more examples. In a world in which many supposed love and light New Age teachers require a large amount of money from their students, And because they have a higher perception of value, they can charge $200, $300, $400, $500 for a session to clear someone instead of freely using the internet to teach those people how to clear themselves. Also, if you're engaged in activities that are drawing in those entities, you can have a clearing from a specialist, but those entities will return later, and they might bring their friends as well. If the root cause of the problem is not remedied, it does not matter how much you pay one of these Reiki healers. They're also known by other names as well, and sometimes they are men. I have had Leon the Gaunt himself, the man that spoke with me about what is to come with China and Russia. Leon the Gaunt himself did clearings on me over 3 to 4 times. I think it's appropriate to pause here and just tell you some of what he told me. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. Okay, because there are some people that have a different perception of him, his former students, and it's not always the most positive review. And my experiences in his psychic school were less than positive. Okay, but I appreciate him delivering his warning to America to me, and for that I am grateful. And maybe some of the things that he told me are accurate as well, but he described to me a situation in which there was heavy alien mothership interference energy around me, at least when I was in Portland, Oregon. Energy that was interfering with me and probably my relationships with women. Energy that at times probably drew in the wrong women, and energy that may have alienated the right women. But in reflection, I really don't think that I've really come across that many women in my life that could actually be put into the category of truly good women or the right women for me. Eve Lorgan writes about the love bite, so we can think in our minds, especially when we're sexually active with some women, and we have a very high euphoria when we have intercourse with certain women. We may confuse our lust with love because, of course, all those happy hormones, those endorphins, are basically going crazy as we engage in the sexual act with some human beings because the body desires to procreate. Okay, and so we can be misled by our genetic code and our DNA that wishes to survive. So there's a reason why there's a lot of women, even if they may seem new agey, why they may be drawn to the barbarian, the man that gets in fights, the man that beats her or whips her, and worse. It is due to that biological code that falsely states to this woman within her own DNA that this is the man to be with because he's strong, if he's willing to control the woman and do this to the woman, maybe he will be a better protector from the other barbarians in the forest. You can also see a situation in which a woman goes home with the man who wins the fight at the nightclub because she wants to be with the tough guy. And I understand where that primal sexual attraction comes from, but I find it highly unconscious for that woman to be drawn to be in a relationship with a man who gets in lost fist fights, because when a man doesn't have control of his own body and he easily goes to blows with other men, he can put that woman in danger. I've seen videos on YouTube of men getting in fights, and then the men that man is fighting also attacking the woman. And so a man should not ever, especially when he's with a woman, look for fights or start fights because he feels sexually aroused, because he gets, quote, a hard on from acting like a tough guy in order to impress the woman, some sort of foreplay. Okay, so when we talk about the biological code, many men and women are acting on this biological code, and they may often confuse that for spirituality. So again, there are many men and women that are drawn to women that are beautiful on the outside, who in fact may not be truly tapped in to the true light. So when we look at the New Age movement since the 1970s and 1980s and 1990s, we see a variety of individuals, including the one by the name of Jay-Z Knight, aka Ramtha. And if you don't know who that is, I recommend that you do some digging so that you can have a greater understanding. You see, to speak out against supremacy and gender-based ideology is not to then attack that ethnicity. There's nothing wrong with blonde hair and blue eyes. It is beautiful, but it is not the only form of life that is beautiful. The obsession with that particular external beauty and the perception that that is a higher value than other humans is not of the light. I look over at my bookshelf, and I have never been of a mentality of only buying books from men. I have always been attracted to that has been perceived as the spiritual woman. But there's a reason why most of the books that I have are by men, because they are the ones that authored the ideas that put together the information that I was guided to. Now I have a book here called Earth Shift. Okay, I'm going to pick it up. It is written by a resident of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. The author is Judith Horky, like Porky. Horky. Horky. And I stopped reading a few pages in because there was a deep, profound obsession with blonde hair and blue eyes. And being that this author is in Pagosa Springs, a place where I lived, where I was heavily judged for not having that appearance, I didn't get a chance to read the rest of the book because it turned me off. And so there's a perception out there that people of certain genetic lines are more spiritual. Now, according to Terry Crews, the author of the book Tough, when he pushed back against black supremacy, even though he supported the Black Lives Matter movement and the George Floyd protests of 2020, when he pushed back against some of the extremism, he was crucified on social media, on Twitter. In the book, he talks about some of the things that were said to him over the years, including the idea that the darker the skin, the more compassionate. So, when we talk about some of the lies that people do believe, we are not just talking about some white people. We are also talking about some black people. And I will also add in that I do suspect that my father's family also covet, even if they don't admit it, their own bigotry and sense of racial superiority. I can tell them about the YouTube channel that I already told you about, the man whose book I just wrote. The man whose book I just bought, Correction. It's early in the morning. The Timeless Reality, and I hold it in my hand and I know that I'm holding truth. It has a high voltage to it. Even if the man doesn't respond to my comments on his YouTube channel, you need to understand that many men of God are not meant to go back and forth with us on social media, which is why I don't go back and forth with many of you, because it contaminates our energy, which is why a lot of people want to come in and manipulate our energy through emails. There are many people that will not watch my videos, but they want to interact with me on Facebook, also known as Mind Fuck Book. That's what I call it, at least. If they really considered me a valuable human, they would listen to my words on my YouTube channel. They would develop the attention span in the same way they have an attention span to listen to Clyde Lewis of Ground Zero Radio, or George Norrie of Coast to Coast AM, or Alex Jones of Infowars.com, or someone else. And so a lot of people, they know on a unconscious, subconscious level that I am a man of value, that I have a high soul voltage. So many will make a beeline for me and my Facebook pages or my personal page while avoiding, like the plague, my longer talks on YouTube, my longer talks on Substack. Because there's something about social media in which when we put our face up, our very essence can be on display, which can attract energy vampires. And I also told one man, who you have seen me promote on my channel, just to put it out there, that while he criticizes women, and I'm giving constructive feedback on how women can become more spiritual, which is different than misogyny. Because there are some things that he said in the past which I agree with, but it does seem to lean a little towards the misogynistic worldview. And so there's a difference between being a misogynist and trying to help people, trying to help women become more spiritual. I see myself as a teacher of men and women, but specifically women. I remember saying to him that even though what he's saying to a certain degree is correct about a lot of these women, in my own life and observation, the real energy vampires have been men. Many, many men have made a beeline for my energy and have sought to harm me psychologically in a wide variety of ways. There are many, many men throughout time that have had an unhealthy obsession with me and have shown themselves to be energy vampires, more interested in wanting to go back and forth on email or private message as opposed to learning from me and opening up their mind, their eyes, their ears, and their heart and their soul to the essence of what I'm saying. There are many, many out there that will consciously be of the attitude that they want to directly engage with me, maybe even drink with me, or fornicate with me, or party with me, while discounting my spiritual message, which, in my understanding and current knowledge, exposes them for the energy vampires that they are. They fail to see the deeper spiritual value in my teachings and will see that as narcissistic when in reality I'm stepping into my true power and role as a teacher of mankind and womankind. So I'm going to try to keep this under an hour. I do see myself as a teacher of women that will teach them their own value, that they too can reach a level of spirituality, but in order to do so, they have to overcome the lies that they have been told by other men and women. They have to see value in my own message, even if I am a short, balding, brown man, not a beautiful white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. If these other women are superior to me, then they should also be warning women about the things to come, not lying to them and telling them that we are ascending, that we are collectively shifting for the better. And so when I look at a number of women, as I said, in the New Age movement, from Ramtha to others, there is a widespread amount of deceptions and false channeled messages, which I do not think are the product of what the mental health field would call schizophrenia, i.e., the voices in the head. I do believe they are receiving transmission. Yes. They are channeling something. Yes. The question is, what are they channeling? And why do we see thousands and thousands of women channeling, quote, the Galactic Federation of Light, also known in other circles as the Pleiadians? And then we see another human being by the name of David Wilcock, blonde hair, blue eyes, who is promoting the idea of the blue avian aliens being our saviors. And then we have the activities of James Gillen, which I already covered. And so you have supposedly all these love and light, high vibrational women. Again, love and light, high vibrational, higher consciousness women that are silent when James Gilliland, Ramtha, and others endorse Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Okay, there's nothing spiritual about partisan politics. As I said in a recent video, you would have thought that people woke up after the JFK assassination. And so what you really have here is a giant genetic pool of human beings that are being led by these demonic forces that they falsely believe are archangels. Now this video, this recording, does go well with a previous recording that I also recorded early in the morning when I was living off grid. And it has to do with how many people that are praying to the one known as Archangel Michael, in many cases may be deceived by something that is something other than a benevolent angel, but in fact may be something that is masquerading as a love and light angel, coming to them in the form that they perceive to be higher value, which we just discussed. Hence the artwork that you see that was made for me by a old friend depicting Donald Trump hugging on various alien groups. That was custom artwork that was made for me. And so we have these supposed archangels coming into the minds of a countless number of human beings that believe that they are being told the truth about the future. Yet they have not predicted 9/11. After the events of 9/11, there were no accurate channeled messages that talked about the truth of 9/11. There are no accurate channeled messages from any of these groups that have talked about the victims of war. There is no evidence of any of these channeled messages showing compassion for the victims of war, nor warning about the political divide, nor warning about increased racial tensions, nor warning the women about human trafficking, nor warning the women about China and Russia. Quite the opposite. Many of these supposed channeled messages from these supposed ascended masters are endorsing Vladimir Putin. And so, I believe that in the proper environments, with the right men and women around them, in true spiritual communities, that yes, women can also come to know God and the angels and the things that are to come. But their mind must be protected from evil. And this current system, this current electric grid, whether you identify that to be the cell phone system, the smartphones, the 5G, right? This current grid is one in which these entities use to transport themselves in and out of this reality. And another quick thing about pornography. You can sit there and think that you can expose Satan's kingdom while watching Satan's websites. Satan is just going to sit there laughing and say to you, you think you can expose me? Here, let me push a button, meet some of my friends. And so people that are on the spiritual path that may dabble with adult content that are hypersensitive, they may sense entities coming at them through the laptop screen or the smartphone if they're watching it through that particular device. As I said in other recordings, there is not just human sex that is portrayed on these websites. It is also Nephilim, extraterrestrial, alien, fallen angel, giants having sex with almost always white humanoid women. So there is a war on women. I am against that war on women. The women that have incarnated into this particular day and age, they fail to see my value and the importance of my message, showing me that they are not at present in this current day and age awake enough spiritually to break the chains of the dark grid that is holding many of them in bondage. There are people that talk about, quote, white genocide, but yet the real white slavery that is actually going on right now that includes women creating babies, many, many babies, a certain percentage of which will pick up arms and fight for the US government, to be misled into war upon war upon war. And I'm here to say that we are not here to be baby making factories to appease the gods of war. If children are to be brought into this world, they should be brought into this world with love. They should be taught by both their mother and their father values, how to eat nutritious food, how to think for themselves, how to defend themselves, how to protect themselves spiritually. You're not going to learn that from a lot of Orthodox religions. So while there is a certain submissiveness to men, like the women in my father's society, as well as the women here in America that see themselves as so independent, what we really have is a submissiveness to bad men. And because many men and women of various ethnicities and genetics have a human brain that is easily hackable, they are often led into bad relationships, careers that do not benefit them spiritually, certain occupations, including the military, and they are often led by the voices in their head that they confuse for their own thoughts. They are often led into moving to certain cities on the planet in order to have a more pleasurable and or spiritual experience. Places like Portland and others. When the more conscious path would be for awake men and women of the earth, of various ethnicities, to find each other and to build those new cities of God from scratch. To not flood en masse to Los Angeles, to New York, to Portland, to places in Texas, to cities in Colorado like Denver or the Springs, or even cities like Pagosa. But to go elsewhere where there isn't already an abundance of negative energy, and to create their own light in the dark of night. Let this video be an overview and an introduction to a more complex topic, which we will return to in the near future. I'm actually going to add one final thing before we conclude. One of the biggest red flags that there is a massive lack of empathy and consciousness with the men and women that have incarnated into today's day and age is the lack of appreciation and understanding of my solar flare information. The fact that it was widely discarded when I went on Coast to Coast AM, that I can be seen as someone ethnic in a world in which women are brainwashed into thinking that men like me are of a lower value and are of a natural disposition to control them and harm them. Meanwhile, as I said, there are some women that will actually be with abusive Muslims because they may actually be submissive to bad men and repelled by good men. So in their mind, in their brains, they may act like they want a good man, but will still end up with a bad man, going against everything that they verbally say out of their mouth. Again, many New Agers with men that get into fights and are on the dark side. The other factor is that if these women of Portland, Oregon were of a truly higher consciousness and tapped into the love vibration, why would they allow me to be homeless in Portland, Oregon when I got on cable access TV and I talked about the corruption? I talked about the Shanghai. I talked about the ghosts of Portland. I talked about the corruption in the city of Portland itself. I talked about the homelessness epidemic, right? And so I was on the air. Unlike most homeless, I was on the air, not on the internet. No, 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 on cable TV. Do you understand? Comcast Cable TV, a multinational corporation, but I wasn't getting paid. But yet, this city, supposedly full of love and light women, into yoga and Reiki and healing, again, in many cases, charging hundreds of dollars an hour for a session. They didn't see me as human enough to help me. There's no way that I would ever view people that don't see me as human enough to help as spiritual. And so there's nothing misogynistic about my message. In fact, I very much support women becoming spiritual, becoming true healers, becoming true teachers themselves. But if people expect me to look at the modern day consciousness of society and call that spiritual, that is not going to happen. And I was not born in this combination of genetics in this body to lie to people and to lead people astray. Even if I could embark on that path and tell people that we're ascending and tell people that we are winning in order to get their love, their physical affection, their sex, their donations, I refuse to accept fake love and fake support and dirty money from human beings that don't want my light to shine as bright as it actually is. By the way, I just want to share a few things about my cousin Anna in the state of Oregon. I never got to know her very well, although when she was a baby, I was a few years older and we grew up on the farm in Aurora. And fast forward to the year 2010, I believe, when I was 30. And she was going through her own addiction as well, which I had actually overcome many years earlier. And at that time, she wanted me to visit and get to know her cousin. And some time has passed. And I remember sending her a message, but was ignored on Facebook. Same thing with Zoe Ansary. And so, what I have noticed, instead of society becoming more loving and conscious, it's become colder. Okay, they're being told false messages by the supposed women full of love and light. They're being told that we are ascending and we are progressing beyond the society that we used to be. And I see the opposite. I see a much more cold-hearted, much more judgmental, and much more racist society than ever before. But society is in denial of it, and the so-called left or anti-racist movement is not accountable for its own white supremacy. And so a lot of women are mind controlled into viewing bad men as good men and viewing good men as bad men. So I couldn't help but notice before I chose to remove Anna from my Facebook, because it was painful just to see her face and to know that I'm nothing to her. It was painful to her to say that her dad is the only man that she will ever trust. And that right there is the slave mind consciousness, which I have not expanded on greatly in this recording. But I've talked at great length in the past about the slave mind in today's man and woman. And that is why they keep bedding down with evil men and allowing evil men to rule over them while they allow good men to rot in the streets. Now, while my Uncle Bruce may have some positive attributes to him, I'm just going to rehash over some things that you've already heard from me. Because I am very disappointed that this Uncle Bruce tried to lead me astray more than once. First of all, I feel that my mother, due to the slave mind consciousness which she possesses, has never had the gusto to hold her brother, her baby brother, accountable for giving me the drug known as methamphetamines in the year 2000, in which I was suffering from a heroin addiction. And so instead of my uncle Bruce helping me get off what I was on, he instead tried to get me hooked onto something else. Fortunately, I was repelled by that substance. So unlike a lot of other people, I did not end up hooked on that substance. I literally had zero withdrawals when I put down that substance after only a few months of using it. And we're talking about moving into a household where there was what we could call a buffet amount of it. Do as much as you want of it. This man known as Bruce brought up his baby daughter in squalor to the point that when she was a baby, she was so hungry that she picked up dog poop and put it in her mouth as a child. Again, because she was hungry. Maybe she didn't know any better. But during those days, Uncle Bruce was doing cocaine on Grandpa's property. It would also be on this property in which this Uncle Bruce made something known as prop dope. He bragged to me about a few things during those meth years. One of which was that he made this prop dope, an early form of speed, an early form of meth, that he said made your you know what so hard that you can hammer nails with it. He also introduced his ex-wife Tamra to methamphetamines in the mid to late 1990s. And so for those of you that follow my solar content, which supersedes anything you'll learn from Sadhguru, David Wilcock, Michelle Walling, or anybody else that's seen as more superior than me, I have told you about the links to drug abuse also and the solar cycles. He bragged that he had, quote, double penetration sex with Tamra with his old friend Don. And that guy's something else. That'll take longer to get into, and it'll take us away from this. He bragged about knowing other people that allegedly ran over a African American somewhere out there. He claimed to know people that were involved at that time in the production of methamphetamines. Again, in the late 90s, I was living in the Pro Court apartments, and I reached out to my uncle for help. And before he actually moved me into his house, knowing that I was using needles, knowing that I was addicted to heroin, gives me a quantity of his drug of choice, but he says to me, don't slam it. You don't tell a heroin addict who's using needles not to slam something and think that they're actually going to listen to you. So thank God that the actions of Bruce Nagel of the state of Oregon, who escaped prosecution for many of his crimes. Thank God the darkness that Bruce Nagel tried to lead me into did not destroy my life. Thank God for Morris Nagel, founder of Nagel Floor Covering in Aurora, Oregon. M.W. Nagel, also known as Bill Nagel, the hunter, the pilot, the World War II veteran. Bruce Nagel kicking a gas can past my head, saying, "You'll never be a Nagel." And yet my mother having some sort of kinship with this man who literally tried to poison her son. Am I to believe that my mother is spiritual? Who told me when we established phone communication several years ago that I should send Bruce a Christmas card, which I did, but he never sent anything back. He claimed he did, but supposedly it ended up lost in the mail. Sent him a text when I really needed someone to talk to, no reply. I'm not going to assume that everything is AI interference. Sometimes it really is the corrupt humans. So when I see Anna say that Bruce is the only man that she will ever trust, I know that her consciousness is so shot that the men that she bedded down with, the men that she was attracted to, as I said, many of them are attracted to the worst men you can imagine in this culture, while the women of this culture are repelled by good men that will actually teach them how to access their higher spiritual powers. The opposite of misogyny. The absolute opposite as you can get. But it's not misogyny to call out the ignorance of today's man and woman, woman and man. That is the right thing to do. And awake women that may be receptive to my message should never come and then defend the consciousness of other men and women and become tribalists because they might feel a little spiritual, that they then feel like some allegiance to the other women of this world to say that the other women of this world are truly loving and conscious too. No, I'm not like that. As a man with a penis, I don't think that other men with penises of my father's heritage or my mother's heritage are good men. I think they're effing bastards. I think the men of this world, of my father's ethnicity and my mother's ethnicity, are mine slave bastards, willing to serve the devil of this world. I'm not a confused man in defense of the men of this world. The men of this world are bastards. But thank those of you that are males that are listening to this channel. But how many of you are real men and are aspiring to be real men, to speak your truth online, to write a book? How many of you will always be consumers of content while making arguments and arguments upon arguments for doing nothing? And how many of you have listened to me for years and years, but never shared my content and never ever once contributed and never ever once had that intuitive light bulb go off above your head that told you the real reason why I stopped creating content for 3.5 years? I literally can't even believe that after all I had been through and even being pushed to live off grid, after not even being able to make it in the city of my birth, due to being treated as a subhuman by the supposed love and light people in the city of my birth. It's amazing how people of this day and age, when you have books around you and universities and the internet, how the people that were listening to me are of such low IQ and intuition that they couldn't even put the puzzle pieces together for themselves to figure out why I stopped creating content. I did not feel loved and appreciated by my own audience. And for a man who grew up with an abusive mother and a father, I came into this world with issues with men and women. And in many, many ways, I needed good men and women to be there for me, to talk to me. There's that song by Stevie Nicks in a duet, I believe, with Tom Petty. You can talk to me. How many people have actually said to me over the years, "You can talk to me, Alex. You're not just a conspiracy theorist. You're not just some MGTOW content creator. You're not just someone that talks about the solar flares. You can talk to me." I want to open up to you and tell you about some of my former romantic endeavors, but I think I'll save that for another time. But there was an older woman who I thought of as like a mother or a family relative who sent me messages on Facebook saying that my content saved her life and that my content prevented her from moving to Portland. And so we talked when I returned to the internet, and I really enjoyed talking to a woman of the opposite sex in a non-sexual way that was treating me like a relative. In a world in which I'm nothing to Anna, I don't feel like I'm really anything to my mother, and I know that I'm nothing to the Afghani women of my father's heritage, and that breaks my heart. And if you're a human being and you're not a robot, then you would have understanding of what I'm going through and what I feel. And so we talked, a paragraph here, a paragraph there. And she talked about my content as I was making it, as I returned to the internet. And that helped me continue making content as I returned to the internet a month ago. And I kept making content. And then I told her about the people that also harm me and why I moved off the grid. And I gave her specific information about this individual who had made a allegiance to Russia, who used to create fake news about Syrian immigrants and how he attempted to attack my reputation online. And she labeled me a person lost in fear, saw that as unspiritual. And so it's amazing how even people can come into our lives and talk to us and seem loving and seem compassionate until, of course, we open up our heart. And see, this is why, this judgment and this heartbreak is why you have unconscious men turning to drugs. You have unconscious, unspiritual men becoming misogynists or women beaters, becoming addicted to pornography, getting involved in radical extremism, whether it be radical Islam or the far left radicalization or the far right radicalization. This is why you have some men that think that it is their right to rule over women because of the unconscious actions of many women that show that they are unfit to lead in many circumstances. This is why you have some unconscious, unspiritual men that seek to dominate then. And some take it to an extreme level to where they will even human traffic or get involved in human trafficking of women because they believe that women are their property. And so if we are to heal these damaged men, to change the topic here to the men, women need to be responsible for how they treat men. That means mothers that have male children. That means women that are super hypersexual and promiscuous, that they take accountability for the hearts that they break of men. That is a very heartbreaking thing to go through. It's not just women that end up falling in love with the people that they're sleeping with. It happened to me. And when you fall in love with the person that you're sleeping with and they break your heart, sometimes we don't ever get over it in reality. And that pain lingers and lingers and lingers some more. I don't think this is the right time to go through a chronology of what I've learned about the consciousness of today's women from my previous relationships and from those in the audience. And what we can all see is a lack of women in the audience. But I will say this. I identify as a powerful spirit that is currently in male form. But just because I am in male form and I have male genitalia does not mean that I have some allegiance to men, that I am playing this gender warfare game of the men versus the women. I also have an allegiance to women, to teach women about this world, to teach the women of 2050, of 2075, of the year 3000, if we even make it that far. To teach them the truth about their own history. Like I said, I could try to talk to an Afghani relative and ask her, tell me the history of my father's country. Summarize 1973 to 2023. And they are of that culture. And they won't tell me a thing. And so nobody's going to tell me it's misogynistic to call out the unconscious men or women. No one's going to tell me that it's anti-black, that it's anti-Islamic, that it's anti-white, that it's anti-American. To say proudly and defiantly, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that can hear the sound of my voice, we are much more than what we have become. And unless we transform into the free society where women are truly free, mentally, spiritually, physically, where the men are truly free, mentally, physically, spiritually, unless we achieve that freedom in our lifetimes, there is great danger coming ahead for future generations. So in many ways, this content that is being generated now is being generated for the women of the future. They're going to be far more receptive to the words of Alex Ansary than the women that were alive in the day and age in which Alex Ansary was alive. Thank you for your time. I am going to tell you one final story. This relates to several months ago, perhaps during the summer. I took part in a live stream that was discussing higher consciousness and spirituality in response to some of the world's problems. For example, many human beings have experienced anxiety and trauma, insomnia, and other conditions. And there are some of us on this planet that believe that spirituality is the only answer, and conventional means are not the answer. Right? Taking pharmaceuticals, things of that nature, right? Those things, in many cases, make it worse. So in many cases, it helps to talk about how we evolve beyond those states of consciousness using spiritual principles. So I was sharing aspects of my story, things that I've been through, things that some of you are already now aware of, but you're not aware of everything. You have not been told everything, but you've been told a great deal. This woman feels compelled to offer services to, do like an energy healing or a clearing or something to that effect. And in many cases, beware of those that falsely present themselves to be healers and teachers, when in fact they haven't worked through their own stuff. And so you can actually make a mistake of receiving supposedly a healing from someone as they put their hands on you or send their energy into you remotely, and it could actually be a negative thing. So we talked back and forth over Facebook because, of course, this woman, like many women, are addicted to social media, and she didn't want to talk over email. She only wanted to communicate over Facebook, of course, where there's interference. And Facebook, by the way, when I send private voice memos, they are often deleted. It would take longer to tell you everything that I'm dealing with as far as social media interference, right? But hopefully you get the point. But I give basically an overview that I've produced this work on the solar flares, which has basically been greatly ignored. And I even talked a little bit about Tina Turner's song, Private Dancer. I'm your private dancer, dancer for money, do what you want me to do. And how I have empathy with regards to the meaning of that song and how some strippers feel. Dancing for dollars when the men at those clubs don't care about them, and they might even be, as far as they're concerned, not even human. As it is with a conspiracy theory. I'm your private conspiracy theorist, dancing for dollars. Say what you want me to say. If I just got on board the right-wing agenda, if I just got on board the Trump train, if I just got on board the left-wing agenda and the mainstream anti-racist movement, perhaps I would be more successful, have enough money for my own home, not be pushed into poverty. Perhaps I would have been left alone off the grid. Perhaps I would have had friends. And I proceed to tell her about how I interviewed Leon, and I believe that these things are coming. And then so she responds saying, okay, I have to put up a barrier, I have to put up a shield or a boundary. The conspiracy theories of Alex Jones put me in the mental hospital, and I was strapped down to a chair. And see, the things that I talk about in no way or shape or form are intended to trigger someone that used to listen to Alex Jones. A conscious human being full of love and light who thinks for themselves should never compare me to Alex Jones and should never mix my content with Alex Jones. That's only what a crazy person would do. There's a massive difference between myself and Alex Jones. So what if both our first names is Alex? I've met plenty of psychopathic Alexes. By the way, I wrote a letter to a guy named Alex White in Portland, Oregon, who kept my stuff when I moved away. He never contacted me about my stuff, and I wrote him a letter, and I never heard back from them. So as far as I'm concerned, my stuff is never, ever going to be returned to me. So she has trauma with regards to listening to Alex Jones. But Alex Jones isn't warned about Russia. Alex Jones is pro-Russia. And this white woman isn't intelligent enough to realize that. She might have external beauty. She might have this aura around her that says beauty, beauty, beauty. Right body, right face, this, that, and the other, at the age, I think, of 44, 45. But yet here I am speaking my truth, and she's triggered. And she basically says, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with conspiracy theories. No, I'm leading to something here. Stay with me. And so I go, okay, she's labeling me a conspiracy theorist. This is not someone who I want to receive a remote healing from, because she doesn't have compassion for my plight, and she sees warning women about the things that may be coming as conspiracy theory, when it's a fact that human trafficking is a problem. It's a fact that there's a movie called Sound of Freedom. I'm not planning to go see it, but it is about human trafficking, and it's very popular, and probably very popular with white women, as it features a white savior, as it features the villainous, evil foreigners. doesn't really address the domestic human trafficking program here and issues with pornography here in our country, in our borders. But it does talk about human trafficking. So she's not showing the intelligence or the intuition to understand the things that I'm saying. I'm basically saying that I've got trauma from working so hard to wake women up and people up. And it's like that song Private Dancer of Tina Turner. And it hurts. It hurts. And then she says, I got to put up a boundary. This sounds like conspiracy theory. So I stopped talking about those things. And she's like, okay, how about that healing? And I'm like, I'm good. And that was the end of it. Then on that live stream, she and the other individual, and you got to understand, I'm not anti-gay, but I see how a lot of women are more comfortable with the gay man than they are with an ethnic man, because of the programming from today's society. So they can act like they're love and light, but they're not. And they both, who were allegedly proponents of sound, stable mental health and spiritual development, began to praise the man known as, are you ready? Are you ready for this? Are you ready? David Wilcock. For those of you that don't know, this guy has been pushing conspiracy theory up the you-know-what. He was on Project Lizelot, Carrie Cassidy's program, in 2011. Type in David Wilcock cries on Project Camelot. Now, I have compassion for men that cry and for women that cry. Although many women, by the way, are conditioned to not cry in public. A lot of them act like they're feminine, but they're living in an evil man's world, an evil entity's world. And so rarely do we see genuine emotions from today's man or woman, even if they think they're feminine. Many of them have suppressed their true emotions. But David Wilcock is on Carrie Cassidy's program crying, saying that he's receiving threats regarding his recent investigation. And what would that investigation be? Would it be into the victims of war or war crimes in Afghanistan or Iraq? No. Have you heard of the fake news that was pushed by Benjamin Fulford years ago called the $1 trillion lawsuit? Okay, so people like Fulford, who have been connected with people like Carrie Cassidy and many others, have been pushing these straight up fake conspiracy theories about the white hats arresting the bankers, or quote, what they call the deep state. And there were some allegations about a $1 trillion lawsuit, which included allegations of aspects of the Chinese government or the Dragon Society. And these were not actual groups. These were not actual mafia groups or triad groups or secret society groups in China. These were groups that Benjamin Fulford made up out of thin air that later got pushed on Jeff Rentz, i.e. Rents.com, who calls the people from the Middle East subhuman, showing himself in many ways to be inferior through his dabbling in fake news and racial hatred. Yet Jeff Rentz is going to have the love and admiration of many white women that think that they are love and light. And so Carrie Cassidy entertains this nonsense along with many other people that have told nothing but lies. It's like she specializes in creating content that is absolutely fake. And so David Wilcock came on her program and was crying and crying and crying. And I'm all fine with someone crying if there's genuine trauma there. But if they're crying or stage crying in order to play up the idea of them being a victim, and then there's Carrie Cassidy, oh, David, do you want to come over to my house? When I showed emotion, genuine emotion, there were no women to even talk to me. In fact, as I told you in the previous segment, I was actually insulted by an older woman who I was coming to trust as like a family member for showing emotion around her. So the women of today's day and age, they're all fine with their own kind showing emotion, especially if they're pushing fake news. But if it's an ethnic man showing emotion, it's like I remember showing like emotion and pain in my eyes when I came back to Portland, Oregon, when I was homeless in 2014, and the white women were afraid of me. I repeat, they were afraid of me. And there was nothing that any ex-girlfriend did to help me establish and keep shelter. I stayed with one woman for a few weeks, but ultimately felt like she hated me. And she snapped at me when I expressed some thoughts and feelings. And that is not exactly a nice way to treat a human being. And so this woman puts up a boundary when I talk about human trafficking, China and Russia, meat and potatoes topics, things that are not conspiracy theory. And she will compare me to Alex Jones, say she's not into conspiracy theory, which is not the truth. So she's a liar, whether she's conscious of that or not. And then we'll promote David Wilcock, who has promoted so many QAnon conspiracy theories, including the idea of Donald Trump kicking the deep state in the you-know-what. And so you have these modern New Agers that have merged their New Age alien savior belief systems with the worship of Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and allowing many men out there from James Gilliland and others to make fake prediction after fake prediction. James Gilliland, by the way, promotes the idea of the, quote, good Anunnaki, right? There's a video that I linked to in my video about James on my Substack, in which he says in 2011, 2012, or 2013, right around that time frame, that the good Anunnaki are returning to Earth. I remember my mother even saying that the bad guys were moved off planet 10 years ago, repeating verbatim content coming from James Gilliland and maybe people influenced by James Gilliland. So even if she wasn't listening to James Gilliland, I don't think that she was. You have, as I said earlier in this recording, many people that are channeling the same demons. And so these human beings, these women that think that they are awakening and that the world is awakening, they are blind to the fact that we are now in the dark ages, the new dark ages. They're still waiting for the ascension. They're still waiting for the 5D. There's also a lot of women in our society that are really obsessed with cleanliness on the external level. Cleanliness, obsessively cleaning, OCD style, the bathroom, the kitchen. And understand, right? You want to keep the pests away. But there should be a greater attempt to clean up this planet, to clean up the karma, not only the individual karma and the planetary karma, but to overcome the negative karma that is coming to this country. In another podcast recording, I'll talk about some past romantic experiences, as I said, but that would be very lengthy. One final thing that I'll share is that I spent a lot of time in the telepathy and psychic powers group on Facebook. And when I posted with my own account under Alex Ansary, and I posted that I had information about the solar flares, and they approved my post, which was the longer video from several weeks ago on how to mediate the effects of the solar flares, not a single person liked it. But yet there are other posts that don't make any sense. People speculating about aliens in the sky when it's likely a satellite, and there will be 50 comments, 60 comments. I also posted with another Facebook profile, not in my group, asking for a healing or someone to do a clearing on me, which is a mistake to go into supposed self-described psychic groups, because there might be some bad alien energy there. And so when I used my less ethnic name, all of a sudden there were posts. People offering their services. Contact me. Pay me. I'll work on you. And when I posted that I also had information about the solar flares and I wanted to actually communicate over voice chat rather than just type back and forth like an insect, rather than a humanoid, it's like we're being programmed towards this insectoid society with all this typing and texting. Then women emerged to insult me. What do you know? Oh, don't act like you have some special knowledge or something. If you have some special knowledge, why don't you just tell us right here and now? There's plenty of times, like I said, in which I posted my info about the solar flares. There's a woman named Angel that I used to have a crush on in Portland. And when I published my article on Nexus Magazine, she's like, this doesn't seem like you. It's like you didn't even write it. When I moved in with those yoga chicks in Portland, Oregon in 2009, and I tried to show them my article in Nexus Magazine, they wouldn't read it. Because, of course, they're of the mindset by being white yoga chicks that they are more superior to me, a short brown man whose ancestry includes the Middle East. Programmed by the post 9/11 world while thinking that they're love and light leftists. I saw some ignorance in the telepathy group recently, and I'm just seeing basically an overabundance of white women posting, but very few people of color. And there's no intelligence in that group. There's no one accurately discussing the future. There are people confusing the man-made weapons or technologies, which might be influencing, for example, the Schumann resonance, and they're confusing that for ascension. They're confusing weapons attacking their body as quote unquote ascension symptoms. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? Instead of these energies being from a natural cosmic forces, their bodies are likely under attack from these man-made weapons, which may even be coming out of Russia. Yet they confuse it for ascension symptoms. And so I made a comment there, this group needs more people of color. And then someone responds, we are all the same color. Now, if they truly believe that we're all equal, that we all have value, and they really, really believe that, then the women of Portland, Oregon would have never let me rot in the street. Then the women that come across my content would not be alienated by my content when I call out the unconscious behavior of men and women, and I say that you can do better if you want to, Jedi. If you want to, Neo. Listen to me and I will help you spiritually evolve. They get turned off by that. And see, all these things and more in conclusion is a sign that a lot of these humans that think that they are super evolved, super conscious, super ascending are being led around by entities that are filling their brains up with narcissistic attitudes and belief systems, telling them that it's okay to not have compassion for the victims of war, for people of color, or even for white women that are kidnapped and shanghaied. And so, while we are going into the new dark ages, my hope is that even if these people don't become my friends, that people will find my content, share my content, take these transcripts of this content. If you use the transcription option, you can copy and paste my words. My hope is that the words that I'm formulating for you right now can be shared and in the future can play a part in the real wake-up process and the real cleanup process that needs to take place here on planet Earth. Okay, with that, I have now said my final words for this recording. God bless and take care.